Never announce that you are a better human. Simply behave as one. You are better than no one, and no one is better than you.
Faster than a speeding bullet.
I ran until my muscles burned and my veins pumped battery acid.
More powerful than a locomotive.
An idea is like a virus. Resilient. Highly contagious.
Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Better Humanology podcast. My name is Jared Moon, and with me, as always, is Talon Schwam. What's up, Talon?
Hey, Jared, how's it going?
It's going well, very well. How are you doing this fine, Better Human evening?
I'm doing well as well.
We're going to go deep on that topic tonight. That's why I call it the Better Human evening. But I think that we should get into, and don't let me forget, I want to get into the challenges, but don't let me forget to give a Murph update before we roll out of the challenges.
Okay.
But let's. Do you want to start, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, I'm gonna go last.
Okay. All right, so I'm rolling my fitness challenge and mental toughness challenge into one this week. Expect everyone to take it on. I wrote an article a while back at End of 3 Fitness, and it was titled 2 Reps for Mad Gains Challenge. And it's all about the aggregation of marginal gains, so getting 1% better. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of that. And the challenge I have, I call it the 2-rep challenge. So the challenge is very simple. So I want you to go the extra mile, like in everything, and I want you to do it for just this week. I'd recommend doing it in all honesty for the rest of your life, but just this week. So starting today, like if you were lifting, unless it's like a max effort set, you're going to do 2 more reps on every training session. And if you're running, you're going to push yourself to run that 1 extra minute. So not an actual extra mile. And if you're doing like a CrossFit workout in like as many rounds as possible. So always finish the round you're on, even if the clock stops. So it's always going that extra little bit, that extra 1%, if you will. And you'll be surprised at really how much this adds up. And I actually did in the article, I wanted to break it down to my own training. So I broke it down and said, in a perfect year, I train 50 out of 52 weeks. I train 5 days a week. And the average, I break down all the math. So the average of my max lifts is 342.5 pounds. And then I go all the way into total volume that I lift. So I geek out mathematical. I'll throw all this in the show notes. But really, what it's doing, if I were to just add 2 reps to 1 set, I'm adding a significant amount of volume it equates to, I think, over a month's worth of training volume, like barbell volume, just by doing those 2 extra reps every single training session.
Wow.
And so I break all that down because these little small, tiny, marginal things never seem like they're that important, but I can basically add a month of training worth of volume by only doing 2 extra reps. And so I think that's what I want to challenge. I think it challenges you mentally and physically in some pretty major ways. That's why I'm tying them in. Try it this week. If you feel like that's something that you can do and continue for the long haul, then I recommend you just keep doing it and just add that to your training routine. All right, so here's the book recommendation for this week. I read this one a while back because I'm not actually keeping everyone up to date on my current reading because I'm rereading some books I've already read. I think I mentioned that last podcast, like The One Thing and some other books I've already finished. Yeah.
Yep.
So this one is called The Happiness of Pursuit by Chris Gilbo, and it's a really, really interesting read. So as you could probably guess from the title, The Happiness of Pursuit, and he talks about, really almost the cliche that we've all heard of.
Journey kind of thing?
Yeah.
So destination? Okay. Makes sense.
He has a lot of amazing stories in the book, and applications that makes it a little more practical, bite-sized. So The Happiness of Pursuit, I just fully agree with that. I don't think that there really is a destination. I think that you need to enjoy what you're doing on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis to really get any sort of happiness out of life. And it's a great book if that sounds interesting to you.
Sounds great to me.
All right, and now sleep. Trying to help everyone with their sleep habits in this month of January. So this one's pretty easy, actually. If you do have trouble sleeping, and what's interesting, I pulled up some data on this. It turns out that over 50% of adults struggle with some form of insomnia, and they might not even know it. You know, like some people are just like, oh, well, I have a little bit of trouble sleeping, but they don't really consider themselves to be an insomniac or have some form of insomnia.
Right.
So it's pretty crazy. And this study was done in 2012. And what they did was for 8 weeks, they gave, I mean, it was like a double-blind test, all this, you know, the full legit study, but they gave one group of adults 500 milligrams of magnesium on a nightly basis. And in 8 weeks, it improved the insomnia severity index, just meaning their insomnia got better, their sleep efficiency got better, their sleep time got better, their sleep onset latency got better, their early morning awakening got better. Like everything just got better, and all they did was take 500 milligrams of magnesium. And I do highly recommend, if you do supplement or take supplements, having magnesium as a supplement, not just for sleep. I think it's amazing for sleep, and that's the main reason I'm suggesting it here. But also, if you're an athlete or you work out, like magnesium is responsible for over 300 different metabolic reactions in the body, and it's been studied countless times for like its benefits in stamina and being like a pre-workout, post-workout type recovery and relaxing the muscles. It does like a million things. Magnesium is just an amazing supplement. It's very safe, and it turns out a lot of people are actually deficient in magnesium. So I highly recommend it. Helps your sleep, helps you be a better athlete and a better human being.
Helps you doesn't it help you like your bowel movements a little bit too? It
does do that as well. So thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, if you've never taken magnesium, don't go full bore your first time. Maybe work up to it, but yeah.
Do you have a Murph update this week?
Oh, I do. So I just wanted to update everybody. It's going swimmingly. The reason I wanted to bring it up is because I've been getting a lot of messages, like people who have taken on the Murph challenge. Some people, you know, they're 20 in, they're 10 in, they're 8 in, you know, like a lot of people are starting to roll on this. Now, I think it was the new year, people like trying to set goals and like, hey, you know what, that sounds like a good idea. Ha! No, they're finding out maybe it wasn't. But
yeah.
But no, it's going really well. I'm most inspired by everyone else who's doing it. So I just wanted to really give a shout out to Murph and doing it on a weekly basis. If you're out there grinding out every week, good on you and keep going. I just finished number 48 this weekend, so only a few more left until I'm done. Wow. What's cool is a guy who used to work for me and a really good friend. He was there when I first started this challenge on the very first Murph, and then he had to go away for training in the military, and he'll be back in town for when my 52nd Murph is.
Wow.
So it's going to be really cool to have him back and do that workout together. And it's going to be awesome. But yeah, like I said, if you're doing it, good on you. Just keep grinding. For me, it's really just almost this like mindless, thoughtless process at this point, but I still trying to get better. I just PR'd again this last week. Not many PRs, I think, left in the tank, but
yeah,
that's
can't
it.
be, right?
Yeah. All right, dude.
What's the limit of improvement, right? But okay, so for my challenge this week, it's a little different. So what we're going to be talking about, I know we have some other things we're going to talk about in the show and cover, but here in just a minute, what we're going to be talking about are kind of revisiting some of the questions that we've asked our guests over the last couple of years, and we actually answered them ourselves in the very, very first 000 episode of the Better Humanology podcast. And so what I want you guys to do is listen to the questions that we're asking ourselves, each other, kind of revisiting and answering again, and listen to them and then ask yourself these questions after the show, and really focus on that last question that we always ask everybody, because what it will do is try and help you solidify what you believe and how people get better and how to help others get better. And it'd be great if you could take the step even, the challenge even to the next level, to another step, and try to figure out how you can use that belief to make somebody else better. If it's you believe reading more books is the best thing, then and see if you can inspire someone to read more with maybe a book suggestion. Or if you think, I think somebody suggested that on the show a while back. If you think a good healthy diet is the best way, to be better, then be willing to share your recipes or maybe your knowledge about what you know about that stuff. Try and spread the wealth of knowledge that you know and the skills that you have, and maybe understand those a little bit better by answering these questions that we have on this show.
Yeah, man. And those questions, we're going to revisit them tonight. So the podcast has been around. We just kind of hit at the beginning of January our second year in doing the Better Humanology podcast. And the questions that we asked each other, we didn't even call it episode 1. It was called episode 000. I actually don't think you can get it on iTunes right now because they only keep 99 episodes right, yeah. in the tank. But Talon and I started the podcast off asking each other these questions. And they're the questions that we ask every guest. And, Talon and I talked about it would be a really good idea to go over it now, 2 years later, see what's changed, what's stayed the same, how we feel about our answers, and just kind of discuss that a little bit. But the reason, I think this is just so interesting, and then we'll get into the questions, is the person I was the day I started the podcast is so far from the person I am now. Like maybe, talking about on like an ethical level or like some of my core principles about like family and things like that. Yeah, some of those things are unwavering, but as far as how much knowledge I've obtained, how much just better, really, how much better I am. Like if I were to meet myself 2 years ago and had a conversation and got to talk to myself for like an hour, I'd be like, wow, yeah, you didn't know that much 2 years ago. And I really feel like that's how you should feel about yourself, even, a few months separation or, a year. I think that if you met the previous version of yourself, you should not be more impressed with the previous version of yourself. You should always be impressed with, or really maybe disappointed a little bit that you're not as good as you could have been or good as you think that you might be now. So, I guess we can get to the questions.
I think that's a great point. Yeah, I'm excited to answer these questions because I think what you hit on is really gonna tie into my new answer for that last question.
Okay, so we normally start the questions off pretty light.
Fire.
Yeah, the quick fire question, and
right.
We go with the hardest workout you've ever done. Mm-hmm. So I asked you that question when we first started, and I believe your answer was the Baton Memorial Death March, right? You did that with no training, which is a marathon in the desert in combat boots, for anyone who doesn't know. So I'll ask you again now, what is the hardest workout you've ever done?
I think because of how hard I had to push myself to be able to complete it, my answer's changed to Murph.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because so with the untrained marathon, like I said, a lot of that, with how challenging it was being in combat boots in the middle of the desert, there weren't times where you could, there were times where you had to stop, where you had to like get your legs checked on. Like my partner that was there with me had to get his knees checked because he had like knee surgery a couple years before or something crazy. So like there are times where you're not pushing you're pushing your body's full exertion, but you're not pushing like your muscles full capacity. It's not like I was running like a sprint as fast as I could the longest time. It was more about just making it through it. Whereas doing Murph was like I had to actually complete these repetitions of exercises that I am not skilled at. So I had to really put a lot more into it. Whereas running, jogging, walking at times was something that I could, really push myself through, I think, much more easily anyway, back then than I could now, as opposed to all those things in Murph. Because Murph was just, oh my goodness, man. When I did Murph, it crushed me.
Yeah, Murph is, it's a dirty one.
It is.
It's a crazy workout. So you want to bounce back and forth?
Yeah. I want to hear yours. I don't need. It's funny. Do you have everything that I said before? I don't have what you said. Your old answers.
Yeah. So I said that I didn't actually give like a real like concrete answer. I said that pretty much anything. The first time I said anything that pushes me to go really high intensity with a barbell. but to be honest, I didn't answer the question very well. So I'll say the hardest workout I've ever done to date is a workout that I created called "Condition Me to the Grave," and so it's and I'll put this in the show notes if anyone wants to see it, but it's 100-calorie row, 100-calorie airdyne, 100 double unders. Then you run a mile. Then it's 75-calorie row, 75-calorie airdyne, 75 double unders, run 1 mile. 50-cal row, 50-cal airdyne, 50 double unders, run 1 mile. 25-cal row, 25-cal airdyne, 25 double unders. But the catch there is that you have a 60-minute time cap. So if you can't finish it in under 60 minutes, then you didn't complete the workout. And that's what makes it so difficult, is having to get through that much work in a relatively short amount of time for how much work you are doing.
You gotta be really booking it.
Yeah, and it might seem like it if people don't know me very well, because like I'm doing Murph and like I just mentioned the conditioning workout. I'm not like an endurance guy, so that's why that one sucks for me. So that's highly aerobic capacity workout there. I'm much more comfortable under a barbell and doing metabolic conditioning or strength training. So that one's pretty awful. But I did contemplate one of the Murphs being the worst, like the double Murph or triple Murph. But I think I've just become.
Now you've done Murph so many times.
I think I'm just like almost immune to it. Like
yeah.
I'm not. I don't think about it as much anymore.
So about building mental toughness, that second question. What was I think it was the best advice for building mental toughness.
Yeah. So what's your best advice for building mental toughness?
What was yours before?
So originally I said I did a dual answer, and I said that the cold.
Right.
Or sleep deprivation. But I brought up sleep deprivation more as that's how I think that you really get to know who someone is.
Right.
Is to just catch them a little bit tired, or a lot of bit tired for sleep deprivation, and see who they are at that point. And if you can still be friends with them when they're sleep deprived, then you're probably going to like that person in almost any situation. But has my answer changed? Yeah. I mean, I still really believe. I think that I have to break down mental toughness into like micro and macro. So micro, I still believe cold. Okay. Like I think if you throw any human being in a what's 30 seconds to make you more mentally tough? I'm going to say extremely cold water. But I don't think that builds the real type of mental toughness that you need to be good at life. I think that just commitment or like habit for a very long period of time, and I talk about this from time to time, but like committing to something for a year, committing to something and actually doing it. If you can do something every single day for a year, and you're like, yeah, no, I legitimately did that, and I don't care what it is. I did that 365 days this year, and it's not something like brush your teeth, that's going to be impressive, and I think that's what builds the mental toughness to really succeed in the long haul of life. So how about you, man?
Well, I think my answer is kind of similar. So before, what I said was self-reflection. I said it really helps build mental toughness. And kind of what I meant by that is really what my answer is now. So my answer now, and it really aligns well with yours, is meeting yourself. And I think it's those moments we talked about on the show plenty of times where either you're at that point in your workout where you really want to quit, or I feel like when I say the example with self-reflection, you've done enough analysis to where you're mindful really of the situation and you understand what kind of person you're putting off to the world. I think that's another way to meet yourself. That's kind of what I meant by that. In my realm, where I'm not working on how to improve everybody's body so much, I'm working on how to improve people's happiness and psyche and things like that, and self-awareness. That's what it comes down for me, is meeting myself through those reflections, through those mindfulness techniques, and just to understand, what kind of, person am I really going to be? Because each time I meet myself in those moments, you get to decide, just like you do in a workout, right? Each time you meet yourself in that workout, you get to decide who you're really going to be. You get to kind of redefine who you are each time. Because when you meet yourself and you decide, hey, I'm going to quit, that's defining who you are a little bit more. And if every time you decide, hey, I'm not going to quit, I'm going to push through this, that as well, is defining who you are and pushing you to become better every time.
I think that hits on so many levels because I've talked about I talked about that in Murph, like stripping everything away to finally meet yourself and
Yep.
You get to decide who you are right then and there. But also another thing that you said is, or kind of like hinted at, is that the decision you make is who you're going to be.
Mhm.
And that's what I love to point out to people. And I think you hit it perfectly, is because you are making a decision one way or the other. I truly don't believe there is a staying the same.
Right.
Like there's every single situation that you get into, you're making a decision every time. Yeah, whether it's a workout or and being mindful or awareness, something, whatever you're doing. Once you come to some sort of realization or fork in the road, just because you didn't say yes doesn't mean you're going to stay on the same path. It's just now you're getting marginally worse, and I think that's an amazing take on it. All right, so then after that we have the equipment. So kind of a lighthearted one. If you only had one piece of equipment to train with for the rest of your life, what would it be and why? You had a very interesting answer the first time. I'll let you share it. So share your first answer and then let me know if it's changed.
So my first answer was earplugs, if I had to have one piece, if I could only have one piece. And it was because the way, and it ties into my last answer too, because the way I improve, the way I train, I feel like it needs to be in silence, and not silence fully because my mind is working so fast and so much when I have that silence kind of. And I think a lot of people, I think it's different for everyone. Some people, they'll put on Mozart, or they'll put on rap or whatever, the trance music. They'll put on any kind of, or maybe a podcast or, a book, whatever. They'll put on something that helps them focus. And we talked about that on the show before too. But for me, it's just always been that kind of silence, that the quiet that my mind finds, the answers it's looking for. And I feel like I find that answer better in workouts as well, in silence. The better answer as in choosing not to quit when I'm let my mind kind of work unfiltered without anything else going on. So honestly, that's the one answer out of all these things, out of all these questions, that hasn't changed. Earplugs would stay the same.
That's awesome. And I agree with that. I think if we're always stimulated, we're stimulated constantly all day, like almost every second of the day, between advertisements, TV, our cell phones, traffic lights, whatever you're encountering. Right. And so just bringing that down to a workout, if now you need this music to get all jacked up, what are you really learning about yourself? I think that music can be a useful tool in workouts from time to time, but going back all the way to the other point is how about you meet yourself? Just do a really freaking intense workout in a absolute silence, and all you can hear are your thoughts and who you really are. And if you don't like that person, guess what? You can change it. So I think that everyone should do that at least one time in their life.
Person's probably not a better human if you don't like them.
Right.
So you still got some work to do.
I mean, it's very possible to get to your lowest point and find out that you don't really like who you are. But I think that's a good thing, because you admit to it, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to make this better.
Right.
Yeah.
But it does take that strength of perspective, really, of looking at it in that positive light and looking like, okay, well, when I have setbacks, I'll use them for positive gains. And that's not everybody. And so hopefully, just by talking about that process and listening to us, we've given some people some confidence for making that decision, because it's not always an easy one.
All right, man. For me, it stays the same as well. So, workout.
Is it a barbell?
Yeah. So I said a barbell would be my piece of equipment if I had to. That was all I had to train with the rest of my life, and that won't change. I'll stick with a barbell. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff out there. And we've had a lot of guests on the show give some very interesting answers. But, I still ultimately love the barbell. It's like my best friend. I enjoy barbell workouts, and will for as long as I'm able to.
It's awesome. I wouldn't have guessed that you'd have any other answer for that question.
Yeah, I mean,
you're Mr. Barbell.
I even thought about it for a little bit. I was like, maybe I should change it just to be interesting, but no. All right. I'm going to make you answer first.
Okay.
All right. So the last question. This is the most important question of the show that we ask. We've asked every guest. Scroll back through the podcast if you're new and you don't know that we ask these questions when we do have guests on. Yeah, we've had a lot of cool people on the show, and they all have had to answer this question, and they've all been very varied, from 15 to 20 minute responses to 30-second responses to 3-second responses. People,
couple words,
people know what they take. So I'm gonna ask you. Maybe we transition what you said and what it is now. So,
Okay.
What's your best advice for becoming a better human? And it's 100% open ended.
Now?
Oh, give me what you did first. What did you say the first time?
So originally I think I kind of copped out. It was a good answer because I think it made sense. But originally I said, listen to the show. Tune in to this show if you want to become better. That's the best advice.
It's not a bad answer.
Yeah, well, it was a good company answer.
It doesn't help me learn more about Talon, though.
That's true. It doesn't. It doesn't really tell my story. And that's usually what this answer does. Is it kind of tells the story of the person's mindset about life, I feel like. And so I wrote down a couple of notes for this answer, for my true, real answer now, because it's important to me. And I really think my answer was fine before, but I feel like over the course of the show, this question has developed, like it's taken on kind of a life of its own. And I think what I've learned just from you asking this question and from the responses we've had is so much and so beneficial that I need to do my due diligence and give our listeners my real perspective.
So this is almost like the first time you've actually answered it.
It is, really.
I'm excited.
It's not that big. It's not that special. But how I feel is that the best advice for becoming a better human is to wake up tomorrow and acknowledge your connectedness to all things and everyone else, to all people. And because everyone, I feel like, has a lesson for us, whether they know it or they don't, no matter what age or, what level of intelligence or whatever it is. And so I feel like that everything and every person should be cherished and treated with respect. I think that's a great place to start for becoming a better human. But I also want you to wake up and appreciate just the air you're breathing. Appreciate what you do have instead of what you don't have. I think that goes a long way as well, for acting the way you want to do, for becoming who you want to be. And then ultimately it's bringing a healthy desire for more. And it's not more things. I think that's where a lot of people jump to. More, I need more money, I need more, bigger house, more cars, more, lovers, whatever it is. There are all kinds of things out there people want more of, but it's not more things. It's more for yourself. It's more out of your life. And it's just like, I said a second ago, it's other people and other things in life deserve respect. I think you do as well. And it starts with you respecting yourself. Because I think the greater expectations that you have for yourself, the greater you'll accomplish. And I think Jared kind of hit on that earlier on in the show about kind of expectations, right? You have for your life. I don't think he said that word, but it rang with me that way. As in, like, if you really look at what you want to be and try and kind of change the way you look at it, as instead of who you want to be, and look at more like who you should be, or who you're meant to be, or who you're ultimately going to become, it kind of changes that perspective and make that really non-negotiable, non-optional. I think that's the best way to go about it.
There it is. I love it, man.
It's a little different, a little better than the first time, I think.
No, it's good. I'll stick with listen to this show, but no, it's a beautiful thing. All right, my turn.
Yeah, what do you got? What did you say the first time?
To be honest, I don't think what I said the first time and now it's going to be funny how I answered. So the first time I answered it was the big picture, like one word answer was focus.
Okay,
I think that the more you focus on something, the better that you'll be. And focusing on the right things, as I mentioned in the first time I answered this question on the podcast. And I think that I kind of, in the same vein, still think that that's what it takes to become better, but I think that I've narrowed it down on what to focus on. So it's like it's still focus, but what to focus on.
Yeah.
And I really think that going back to my challenge, the 2-rep challenge from the beginning of this podcast episode, talking about the aggregation of marginal gains, getting 1% better. And then I mentioned earlier in the podcast how the person I was the day we started this podcast to the person I am now are just completely different. And I think that has to do with just focusing on getting that 1% better. And that's the short answer, is focusing on getting better. But how do you actually do that? Like, what is the tangible action items there? And I break that down to trying. You have to put in the effort.
Try hard.
Try really hard, put in the effort. And then the two things that I kind of add there are discipline and then habits. Because try, discipline, habits. And the reason in that order, because if you're putting enough effort into something, you've focused on this 1% better. Look, if you were to just like dissect every part of your life and say I want to get 1% better here, 1% better here, that's not overwhelming because it's 1%. And
right.
what everyone does, every person that I know that wants the overhaul approach when they have some goal or they want to achieve something. And I think that's great. And like if you're in business and you just want to swing for the fences, or you're starting some new project, I think that's okay. But when you're trying to reinvent yourself, I don't think it's okay. I think that you need to go the 1% route. And so back to why it's in that order. So giving that effort for that 1%, and that's going to require discipline, new disciplines, right? And discipline sucks. Discipline takes willpower. It eats away at your mental capacity. It's difficult. No one enjoys doing it. But you only have to do it long enough until it becomes habitual, right? And that's actually a good point. Like that book, The One Thing, that I talk about all the time, I just finished reading that for like the 19th time, and not really, but I've read it a bunch of times.
I need to read this book.
It's pretty good. It might resonate with you, it might not. Like it really could go either way. But he talks about you only need to have discipline long enough for it to be habitual, and I absolutely believe that. It's all of the little things that I have now that I think that are like moving me in the right direction for becoming a better person, better human being, have just slowly become, they started as like discipline and then they slowly just become habitual. So I don't really use my willpower to achieve certain things. Like working out now. Like there's no struggle with that during the day.
Right.
It's become so habitual. There's no.
That's your passion, though.
I know,
it's
but
like,
I'm saying there's no willpower there. There's no discipline to get the
right.
fitness done. But there was at one point. But I'm trying to do that with like 50 different things in my life, and I'm succeeding in a lot of them. And I think that's how you get better. Is we talked about this. I don't remember which episode it was recently, but like kind of becoming that machine.
Yeah.
I've always been attracted to that idea of just like becoming this machine. And how do you actually do that? That's my 3-step process. Is put in the effort, have the discipline just long enough until it's a habit, and then once it's a habit, that's the new you. Unless something happens that makes you fall off the wagon, but I don't know how that would happen.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it's like a roadmap for how to improve.
Yeah, and actually, I wanted to read, just to kind of coincide with that, read the the whole idea of this 1%, getting 1% better. Is that cool with you?
Yeah. So let me just ask something real quick on that.
Yeah, no problem.
So that's like a daily goal? Is that a yearly goal? Is that just like the flat out like this is what I'm shooting for? Was there a time limit on the 1%? Because in my mind, I'm thinking like, well, I mean, the next year I want to make a little more than 1% gains on things.
So I would say it depends on what it is, but maybe you can get 1% better at something every day.
Yeah, sure. I think that's a great goal.
So
that's
yeah,
what you're
like
saying.
Maybe, yeah, like 1%. Well, I definitely think if it's really big, that might not be the case. But in the smaller things in life, yeah, I think 1% better every day than you were yesterday, kind of.
Got it.
Yeah.
Because it builds. Yeah, because a year, you're 365% better.
Right, and they say it takes 3 weeks to. I mean, you have to look at it in habits, not actually percent
Right.
per day. But so like one habit would be once it's completed, you've kind of achieved that, and it really takes a habit. 66 days is the realistic number to create a new habit.
What?
Uh,
How did I get you to rouse you to pull these numbers out? This is good.
that's also from that book, the one thing.
Oh, okay.
Well, they that study where everyone thinks it's 21 days, right? 3 weeks.
Right.
And that was, I think, I can't remember the exact mathematical term, but it was like, that was like the fastest that people were doing it or something, like the low average or whatever, or the high average, should I say. Like people were accomplishing it in 21 days. But if you actually break down that study, most people was actually taking about 66 days to create a new habit. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, it takes you over 2 months to actually solidify something as like, okay, this is part of who I am now. And I think that's crazy. Okay. So this is written by James Clear. We actually had him on the podcast at the beginning. Phenomenal writer and good guy. And the title of the article is "This Coach Improved Every Tiny Thing by 1%, and Here's What Happened." So I just want to read this quick excerpt and just to kind of illustrate the point. So
Sure.
in 2010, Dave Brailsford faced a tough job. No British cyclist had ever won the Tour de France, but as the new general manager and performance director for Team Sky, Brailsford was asked to change that. His approach was simple. Brailsford believed in a concept that he referred to as the aggregation of marginal gains. He explained it as the 1% margin for improvement in everything you do. His belief was that if you improved every area related to cycling by just 1%, then those small gains would add up to remarkable improvement. They started by optimizing the things you might expect: the nutrition of the riders, their weekly training program, the ergonomics of the bike seat, and the weight of the tires. But Brailsford and his team didn't stop there. They searched for 1% improvements in tiny areas that were overlooked by almost everyone else. Discovering the pillow that offered the best sleep and taking it with them to hotels, testing for the most effective type of massage gel, and teaching riders the best way to wash their hands to avoid infection. They searched for 1% improvements everywhere. Brailsford believed that if they could successfully execute this strategy, then Team Sky would be in a position to win the Tour de France in 5 years' time. He was wrong. They won it in 3 years. In 2012, Team Sky rider Sir Bradley Wiggins became the first British cyclist to win the Tour. The same year, Brailsford coached the British cycling team at the 2012 Olympic Games and dominated the competition by winning 70% of the gold medals available.
Wow.
In 2013, Team Sky repeated their feat by winning the Tour de France again, this time with riders Chris Froome. Many have referred to the British cycling team feats in the Olympics and the Tour de France over the past 10 years as the most successful run in modern cycling history. Now, this last little part is, I agree with so much. James Clear said, "It's so easy to overestimate the importance of one defining moment and underestimate the value of making better decisions on a daily basis. Almost every habit that you have, good or bad, is a result of many small decisions over time." So I think that's a really powerful article.
Yeah.
I mentioned the same study or the same Brailsford in the 2-rep challenge article that I wrote on just getting a little bit better. But I just think that it's very interesting approach and idea.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it reminds me of kind of like, I haven't heard of anything like that before, but it reminds me kind of like total person concept, but not necessarily in the military, like we've heard it used, but more so like you hear it on like a sports team, like when you're growing up, maybe your high school football team goes out and does community service or things like that. And I know this isn't necessarily what you're talking about with this example, because I think the study sounds amazing, but I think that's kind of what small things like that do sometimes. I think when you're improving, like that you're improving morale, you're improving communication of the team, how they work together, how they feel about each other. That's a small thing that people don't think of, whereas opposed to practice, people might think would be a better use of the time. So I feel like, I think making improvements all around. I think a great example, like washing their hands, something nobody would have ever thought of. Like, really, this is gonna make them a better team, but it's such a such a out there thing. You make an improvement there, just like you do in so many other areas that it builds up.
And that's crazy is because you think about washing their hands, like, yeah, if they get sick, even if they have these superior immune systems, they can get over an illness in like 24 to 48 hours. That's still they lost that much training time.
Right.
And when Michael Phelps, I heard this recently watching something on him, is they were like, well, you know, what did you do to really step up before he had won any gold medals? Like, what did you decide? And he's like, well, I looked at a lot of the other elite swimmers, and they basically trained 5 days per week and would take the weekends off. Some of them were doing 6 days. And he's like, well, I just decided I was going to train 7 days a week. And he's like, that would give me, 52 more training days per year than everyone else in the competition. And I was like, that's amazing. You know, like it's such a small thing. Like the math works out really easy. And I'm sure like not every day was a super hard day, but just that dedication and discipline to be like, oh, you're all doing like 5 or 6? Okay, I guess I have to do 7. Seems like such an easy answer, right? But it's such a hard thing to do. And the other point that you mentioned at the very end of that article is maybe you ever heard the term an overnight success, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like absolute BS, you know. And anyone who it might have been Chris Gilbo, the guy who wrote the book I mentioned at the beginning. And he has another book called The $100 Startup, and it's like the myth of the overnight success, because he hit some phenomenal success with his books and courses and stuff, and was doing really well. It was like he was on the news, and they were like interviewing him. They're like, "Wow, you're just kind of like an overnight sensation." And he was like, "Actually, he's like, I've been pounding the pavement and like working my ass off for like the last decade, and like I just now got recognized." Right. And it's like I'm not an overnight success. I've been working my ass off. Thank you for the recognition or whatever, but no, there's no such thing as an overnight success.
Right. But the concept is so sexy to people is the thing, is that everybody wants that. They're looking for that. Even this show, I mean, in some ways, we are trying to help people find that. We've thrown out like some challenges here that are kind of cutting corners. That are helping people try and get to where they want to be faster. But there is that kind of like that allure of that overnight success, like they just came out of nowhere, like a Kurt Warner kind of story or something like that, or Draymond Green, like some people who are in sports or whatever they're in, you know, like Elon Musk, you know, people that just like suddenly explode onto the scene. It's hard, I think, for some people to realize when they haven't been in the scene for a while what they've been doing all those years beforehand to get there. Like the examples I just thrown out there, like Kurt Warner, I mean, it's a guy that worked his butt off all through, you know, had a college degree, scholarship, and all that to play at Delaware and everything. You know, all these examples, people had lots of work behind the scenes, I think, to get to where they were. So I think that's what we've been doing here too. We've been working behind the scenes a lot for these last couple of years. Yeah,
and I do believe in like an epiphany moment or an inflection point.
Sure, yeah.
And that's, if I had anything that really, one, if you're listening to the show for the long haul, that goes with my committing to one thing. You know, this is something that can make you better. Like we're talking about it every week, but yeah, maybe there's just one idea or something that you hear that maybe from one of us, maybe from a listener, or I mean a guest, that gives you that epiphany, that inflection point, and you know, something for you to take action on.
Yeah.
But hey, man, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed going over this. I love your challenge for this week. I think that all the listeners should ask themselves the same questions and really reflect on this kind of stuff. And yeah, let's do it again.
Absolutely. I love the walks down nostalgia lane. You know me.
Yeah, one of my favorites. All right, man. Well, if you're enjoying the podcast and you want us to ask this question to future guests more, go ahead and leave us a 5-star review and a positive comment on iTunes. You have any parting shots for the listeners?
Thank you, guys. I think the last time I checked, we were like a 102, so I'm super happy. Appreciate all you guys who have left feedback and given us reviews. Really, really helps the show.
All right, we're out.
Thanks, guys.
your best. Losers always whine about their best.